Hi guys, welcome to today's tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this beautiful off-shoulder dress. And as you can see, this is a ruffle dress with 2 layers. So we're going to cut the top part separately and the bottom part separately. Now I'm going to be starting off with my fabric unfold. I have 2 pieces of fabric folded here, one for the front and one for the back piece. To estimate the amount of fabric that you're going to fold, what you're going to do is take half of the widest circumference, which in this case is the hip, and add a minimum of 10 inches to that in order to calculate the amount of fabric you're going to fold for the back piece and the front piece. Next, I'm going to be placing my vertical measurement. I remember this gown has 2 layers. The lower layer is about 8 inches in length, which I'm going to subtract from the total gown length. And because it's an off-shoulder gown, I'm going to start measuring from 5 inches, which is going to be the neck depth for this off-shoulder gown. What I have left is about 35 inches, and I'm adding 2 inches for the allowance to join the lower layer and allowance to form the elastic casing at the top. Now I'm cutting out my fabric, and unfortunately I lost the footage where I showed how to mark the shoulder measurement, so I'm just going to describe as I cut along that region. So what I simply did at the shoulder region is I came in from the edge of the fabric by about 4 inches and marked, and then I went down from that mark by 8 inches to create a sort of armhole. Then I now slanted from the top of that fabric to the 8 inches mark in order to create the armhole effect. So I've just cut along the line which I slanted from the top of the fabric to the 8 inches mark. Same way you're going to do it for the sleeve in order to create the armhole so that everything matches. So after cutting out the fabric, you find out that you have 2 layers, one for the front and one for the back. And at the shoulder, remember we marked 10.5 inches on fold. When you open it up, what you have at that top is 21 inches in front and 21 inches at the back for the shoulder measurement. Then your armhole slant is about 8 inches long. Next, to cut out the sleeve, you're going to do the same thing you did for the body of the fabric. You start marking from 5 inches, then you're going to mark down to the length of the sleeve, adding 3 inches to serve as elastic casing allowance for the top and the bottom of the sleeve. The width of the fabric for each sleeve is the round arm circumference plus the 10 inches that we added, same as the body, to create the ruffled effect, and I've placed that on fold. So in this case, the round arm circumference of this person is 20 inches plus 10 inches, 30 inches divided by 2, 15 inches. So 15 inches is what I'm going to mark on fold. So for the sleeve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in by about 4 inches from the corner, and then from that 4 inches mark, I'm just going to go down by 8 inches to create the armhole, as you can see, and I'm going to slant from the 8 inches mark right up to the top of the fabric in order to create that armhole effect. So the length of this slant that I've created for the armhole is 8 inches, proportionate to the armhole for the body of the fabric. Next, I'm going to be cutting out the second layer of the dress, which is 8 inches wide, and because I'm not going to hem it, instead I'm going to take it for interlocking. I'm only going to add 1 inch allowance to join it at the top and for the interlocking. So I'm cutting out a total of 9 inches on multiple strips of fabric. Because the second layer of the gown is going to be fuller and more gathered than the main body, the strips of fabric are going to be twice in length of the total length of, or the total width of my gown. So I measured the width of the gown for the front and the back pieces and times that by 2 in order to get the strips of fabric that I cut out for the second layer. And because the length was a lot, my fabrics is in bits, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to join them together, then I'm going to go over to my machine and create the gathered effect. Then I'm going to cut the strips out and join them all together. So next, I'm creating my elastic casing by folding in by ½ an inch, and then I'll fold in by another 1 inch in order to create the casing for the elastic at the top of the fabric. After I've folded, I'm going to place that on my machine and sew it down. I'm going to repeat this for the front panel, the back panel, and the sleeves. At both the top and the bottom of the sleeves, I'm going to create elastic casings. Then I'm going to pass my elastic using a safety pin through these casings I've created to the end. And then I'm going to secure that down with my machine at both ends to get the gathered effect. After attaching the elastic on one side, I adjust the fabric along the elastic to get the amount of ruffles or gathers I want. Then I fix it on the other end. And I'm now attaching each sleeve to the body of the fabric. I've placed right sides facing each other, and I'm joining them by the armhole, sewing on a diagonal line with 1 inch allowance. Now, before I join the body of the fabric, I'm going to show you 3 different ways you can create ruffled effects for the bottom. So either you use your needle and thread by hand, you pass that through the entire length of the fabric, then draw it out in order to create that, draw it together and create the gathered effect, or you sew down your fabric with the machine and then you use one string of thread to draw the fabric together and create the gathered effect. The third option is to do it as I am doing now, which is gathering as you sew. If you're skilled enough to be able to control your machine and do this, do go ahead. If not, you can gather it by hand or using your machine. So now what I'm going to do is I've marked halfway across the front of the fabric, and I've gotten half of the ruffles for the bottom, placing right sides facing each other. And what I'm going to now do is I'm going to use one hand to hold the main fabric so that it doesn't ruffle, while I am pushing the fabric on top and gathering it by hand in order to create that ruffled effect. So even though this is a little bit more stressful, I prefer to do it this way. It's a matter of choice. You mustn't do yours like this. There are different ways you can do yours, which I've shown you. So I'm using my right hand to hold on to the bottom of the fabric, or which is the body, the main body of the fabric, because I don't want that to be ruffled, while I am pushing the top piece, which is the lower part or the extension or the ruffle that I'm adding, that's the second layer. And as I'm sewing, I'm pushing that in order to create a ruffled effect while holding on to the lower piece with one hand, so that that piece does not ruffle. So next, I've finished one side. I'm going to turn it over, and this time around the main body of the fabric, as you can see, it will be on top, while the part I'm trying to ruffle will be below. So as I go along, I'm going to be creating the ruffles so that it gives an even, neat effect afterwards. As you go along, please try to make sure that the main body of the fabric isn't ruffled, while the part that is layered, or the second layer, the extension, is being ruffled gently. Just take your time, and if you make a mistake, you can easily correct it, but try as much as possible not to make mistakes. And if you prefer, you can ruffle it by hand, or you sew a straight stitch across the top of the second layer, and then you draw that together in order to create the ruffle effect. So you can see that the main body of the fabric isn't gathered, but the other part is. Now I am joining the sleeves together, the sleeves and the body. So I've placed the sleeves together, and I'm going to sew all the way down to the end of my fabric. So now I'm joining the body, the sides of the fabric of the dress together. As you can see, I've put elastic through the elastic casing and sealed it at both ends. Just take your time and place them side by side, making sure that all edges are lined. Join the fabric on a 1 inch sewing with 1 inch sewing allowance, and then just sew that down to the end. As you can see in a few seconds, that the area where the second layer was ruffled and attached to the main body of the fabric. So I'm going to sew that all the way down to the end. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I will be willing to answer all questions you may have. See you in my next one. Bye.